Is Starmer on the brink of resignation? Just moments before, Nigel Farage dropped a real bombshell live in Parliament. Starmer's two-tier policing is doing everything to destroy white population in the UK. So what exactly is the British Prime Minister being accused of? And why do officials in Washington effectively no longer consider Starmer legitimate?
It is now clear to growing millions in this country that we're living under two-tier policing. The instructions that are given to police officers from police bosses are clear and written down in ink. It says you must treat different ethnic groups in different ways.
Broadcasting to 11 million viewers online, Farage exposed a scandalous murder effectively enabled by the police. So, what is the core of the scandal? 18-year-old Henry Novak was stabbed 5 times by a minority group member. When the police arrived, they mistook Henry for the racist attacker and let him die. And within hours, Starmer denied that the officers acted this way out of fear of being accused of racism. Now, take a look.
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe there's two-tier policing in this country. His response has been to appeal for rage. Rage. That's his response. It shows exactly who he is.
In a parliamentary speech, Starmer directly denied the existence of two-tier justice. The UK police treat all nationalities and religions totally equally. And just 3 hours later, Starmer's statement, poll results were leaked. Over 75% of Britons now want him to urgently resign. But after the following footage emerged, thousands in London demanded an immediate general election.
We're living in a two-tier culture in this country where the rights and privileges of white people matter less than those of ethnic minorities. Enough of anti-white prejudice.
Enough of the anti-white prejudice. Opposition leader Farage stated what no one had dared to say for the past 23 months. Under Starmer, native Britons have become second class, yielding to minorities. At a 2,000-strong anti-government protest, Starmer was called Britain's #1 traitor, and finally, Downing Street responded. We offer our deepest apologies to the family of the deceased. The case will be investigated. And after that, Elon Musk entered the game. To an audience of 240 million, the owner of Twitter effectively declared to Starmer, Britons are sick of two-tier policing when murderers are excused because of their minority background.
The Prime Minister has launched a stinging attack on Elon Musk, accusing the owner of X of trying to whip up division in the UK over the killing of 18-year-old Henry Novak, a student.
Musk, again, has been interfering in our politics in the last few days, trying to whip up division. That is not who we are in Britain. In Britain, we are reasonable, tolerant people.
By accusing Musk of spreading fake news, Keir Starmer effectively entered a war against him. Counter-attacking the world's richest man, Elon Musk, reminded everyone about online censorship in the UK. They have arrested over 12,000 people for their opinions on the internet. Joining in, the opposition accused Starmer of making it impossible to express an alternative point of view in Britain, and what followed next was something no one expected.
Extraordinary intervention tonight from the United States State Department. They've spoken out on the murder of Henry Novak, and it's pretty brutal.
Urgently, Donald Trump's administration entered the scandal. This is what the British Prime Minister feared the most. The two-tier policing of the current UK leadership will lead to the urgent decline of civilization. And the official intervention of the White House worsened the situation fivefold. Now, Keir Starmer is left one-on-one against Donald Trump's team, the British opposition and protesters, and also Twitter's owner, Elon Musk. For the incoming White House elites, Keir Starmer represents a catastrophic failure of British justice that must be entirely dismantled. Diplomatic ties are suddenly hanging by a thread dependent on the restoration of basic law and order. Rather than merely issuing a statement, Donald Trump's inner circle actively weaponized the Southampton tragedy. Global heavyweights immediately amplified Nigel Farage's explosive claims of two-tier policing, cementing this crisis as an international scandal. Internal communications exposed by the press paint a devastating reality. Promotions within the UK police force are now allegedly dictated by strict diversity quotas rather than actual crime-solving capabilities, according to Farage. Panic is visibly spreading across the corridors of Westminster. Furious citizens are realizing that the fear of a racial bias complaint paralyzed officers who instead handcuffed a bleeding local man. According to recent polls, more than 53% of Britons are demanding an immediate general election. Mathematically, that amounts to roughly 35 million people who have grown tired of the current government's policies. Overseas allies are now openly discussing a terrifying new precedent, a modern democracy where a false accusation of prejudice carries more weight than an act of sheer murder. Elon Musk broadcasted to hundreds of millions that Britain is locking up ordinary people for social media posts while excusing violent offenders based on their minority backgrounds. This digital confrontation swiftly morphed into a brutal indictment of the entire ruling establishment. Cabinet ministers are trapped between furious street protests, plummeting Starmer's approval ratings, and the undeniable reality of their own ideological traps. An administration that once preached human rights is now desperately trying to deflect the blame onto tech platforms and political rivals. Defending this broken system is no longer a viable strategy. It has become an existential crisis, testing the core principle of equal protection under the law. Anyone who disagrees is quickly labelled as far-right and accused of exploiting the tragedy for political gain. Some analysts argue that this kind of bureaucratic tactic allows officials to shut down controversy more quickly and move the scandal out of the spotlight. Moreover, civil unrest is fundamentally threatening national stability, far beyond mere online debates. As Starmer stubbornly reads out irrelevant statistics claiming an 80% drop in migration, almost a dozen police officers are sustaining injuries in violent clashes. Any further escalation in these riots could shatter public trust in state institutions permanently. Desperate officials are completely frozen, watching as the court hands down a surprisingly lenient sentence to the actual attacker, while simultaneously promising the maximum severity of the law for online dissenters. Downing Street is frantically pivoting, using the grieving family's plea for peace as a shield to silence legitimate public outrage. Opposition says, refusing to acknowledge the systemic anti-white prejudice woven into so-called DEI protocols is being interpreted worldwide as an act of deliberate state censorship. A once proud nation is rapidly alienating both its own working class and its most powerful transatlantic partners. Rapidly shifting polling data proves that the ideological danger now surpasses all other domestic issues. Independent researchers project a massive electoral wipeout for Labour as citizens seek leaders willing to dismantle this two-tier judicial apparatus. Some are even betting that Keir Starmer will resign within the next 60 days, with the odds estimated at around 80 to 85%. Faith in the British criminal justice system is effectively bleeding out on the pavement. Conservative voices in America are loudly applauding the push to investigate over 12,000 politically motivated arrests orchestrated by the current regime. None of this is simply about one tragic stabbing anymore. This represents a total collapse of the social contract between the state and its native population. Every single law enforcement protocol across the country is now facing unprecedented global scrutiny. What we are witnessing goes far beyond the domestic policing era. This represents a terrifying shift where progressive optics are aggressively prioritized over saving the lives of ordinary citizens. Leaked intelligence from Whitehall suggests that some allied nations' NATO members look at the current British administration as a paralyzed entity, deeply compromised by the fear of racial backlash. The sheer legitimacy of a state that handcuffs a bleeding Henry Nowak based on one fabricated phone call is being ruthlessly dismantled on the world stage. No serious political analyst denies that silencing critics will fail to fix a system that treats native populations as second-class subjects. The horrifying reality of an ideological justice system is now dominating every debate inside the House of Commons. Such negligence constitutes an absolute betrayal of the fundamental duty to protect human life. Downing Street remains unable to justify why its leader kneeled for a tragedy abroad in 2020. Yet offers nothing but defensive silence for a murdered 18-year-old at home. The international backlash led by Elon Musk confirms that the UK is increasingly seen as a dystopian surveillance state. Officials in America are demanding immediate explanations for why violent criminals receive lenient sentences below the minimum threshold, while online dissenters face 2 to 3 years in prison. Perhaps the most horrifying aspect of this unfolding crisis is that law enforcement is strictly forbidden from disclosing the nationality or religion of violent criminals. Keir Starmer routinely defends these institutions by arguing that public transparency would only ignite dangerous provocations against minority communities. Leaked internal databases from regional constabularies, however, expose a terrifying reality of approximately 58,000 knife-related offences occurring annually across the country. Mathematically, this translates to another brutal machete or zombie knife attack terrorising British streets every 5 minutes. Nigel Farage urgently warns the public that the courts and police headquarters possess massive, suppressed archives detailing the exact names, backgrounds, and faiths of these assailants. Opposition analysts confidently assert that navigating specific London boroughs with distinct demographic concentrations increases a citizen's chance of suffering a blade assault by a staggering 265%. Notorious grooming syndicates, which the Prime Minister once vehemently vowed to eradicate, remain protected by a systemic refusal to acknowledge their defining characteristics. Participants in these horrific networks overwhelmingly represent specific imported groups. Such perpetrators repeatedly hide behind cultural and religious pillars to justify their systematic exploitation of vulnerable local women. Reform UK leaders explain this unprecedented state protection of minority offenders as nothing more than a cynical, calculated strategy to harvest future ballots. Reportedly, up to 85% of all recent arrivals are viewed by Labour strategists as guaranteed, loyal voters to secure permanent electoral dominance. Even undocumented border crossers are currently being handed accelerated, secretive pathways to full legalisation. Within a mere handful of years, these individuals acquire the exact same social and financial status as native taxpayers who have funded the nation for over 4 decades. Downing Street furiously dismisses these demographic replacement accusations as dangerous, far-right conspiracy theories. Whenever confronted with the raw data, the Prime Minister predictably defaults to rehearsed lectures about the absolute necessity of impartiality and boundless tolerance. Furious voters are beginning to realise that the government prioritises the reputation of specific demographics over the physical safety of the general public. Mainstream media outlets intentionally bury the suspect profiles to maintain the fragile illusion of successful multiculturalism. Law-abiding citizens watch in total disbelief as repeat offenders manipulate the diversity protocols to avoid serious jail time. Every single new stabbing incident highlights the lethal consequences of prioritising political correctness over aggressive policing. Detectives working the streets are allegedly threatened with disciplinary action if they highlight the obvious ethnic patterns in organised crime. Unprecedented levels of violent crime are simply accepted by the ruling class as the unavoidable cost of building a modern, diverse utopia. Financial analysts estimate the social cost of managing this imported criminal wave is quietly bankrupting local councils. Working-class families who cannot afford to live in gated communities are bearing the absolute brunt of this ideological experiment. The sheer volume of suppressed information regarding the perpetrator's origins is destroying whatever faith remains in the British justice system. Foreign observers look at London's spiralling blade epidemic and question how a former empire surrendered its own capital city to armed gangs. Prominent whistleblowers within the Metropolitan Police confirmed that officers spend more time policing social media for offensive comments than disarming actual cartel members. This deliberate blind spot regarding offender demographics makes formulating any effective counter-terrorism or anti-gang strategy mathematically impossible. Starmer's refusal to acknowledge the demographic reality of violent crime is perceived by millions as a catastrophic dereliction of duty. Total narrative control is the only tool the administration has left to prevent a nationwide revolt at the ballot box. Pundits openly speculate that the Labour government is effectively held hostage by the very voting blocs it imported to secure its majority. A profound sense of betrayal permeates the electorate as the state actively shields the identities of those turning British streets into war zones.